What a joy, man. And thank you, Joshua, for helping Colin out. Yeah, appreciate that. Well, people ask at times, how do I know what characters to preach? And I don't. And so I just start praying, pondering, and I just know that the Spirit of God will always put the right thing in my heart. I'm not smart enough. No human is smart enough to be able to dictate that, if you will, and knowing what needs to be said to every single person, but the Spirit of God does. There are those weeks you leave church and you're like, man, I feel like that he was speaking just to me. I was not. I was preaching to myself. You just happened to get caught in the crossfire. And so I say all that to say that this subject today is one that I pray will bring encouragement and hope to you. It is also one that shows the humanity of mankind and how that we can become frustrated while waiting on God. We've all been there, and if not, you're not alive today, because if you've lived long enough, there will come moments in your life when you get frustrated because God delays, God stalls, God waits, whatever it might be. And so I want to talk today on John chapter 11 on a man named Lazarus. And I want to talk about this man and his story a little bit. People focus on Jesus bringing him back to life, but the reality is the dude had to die again. So I'm not sure if that was really a win for him or not. So if you really think about that, you die. You're just about to check into your place in heaven, and they're like, hold on a minute, Jesus needs you back on earth. You're like, again? And so I don't know how all that played out, if you will, but it's pretty unique to think about. But for those who think, Lazarus came back, Lazarus had to die again. As a matter of fact, he was hated by many because of his association with Jesus. But I want to talk today a little bit about when Jesus doesn't come when you expect him to. And I want to just say a few things about that today. In John chapter 11, it says, a man named Lazarus was sick, and he lived in Bethany with his sisters Mary and Martha. And this is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet, wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick, so the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, Lord, your dear friend is very sick. But when Jesus heard about it, and he said, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this. So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Finally, he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. Well, his disciples objected. Rabbi, they said, only a few days ago, the people in Judea were trying to stone you. Are you going there again? Jesus replied, there's 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is danger of stumbling because they have no light. And then he said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go and wake him. And they thought that he was speaking about sleeping, that he would get better. But they thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant Lazarus had died. The Bible says, so he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there, for now you will really believe. Come, let's go see him. Thomas, the twin, said to his disciples, let's go too and die with Jesus. And when Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. And when Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him. But Mary stayed in the house. And Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. And Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. And she started getting theological on him and said, well, he will rise again when everybody else rises the last day. And Jesus said, no, I am the resurrection and the life. I'm not here today to just raise your brother. I'm here to show everybody that I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. And everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never, ever die. Do you believe this, Martha? Yes, Lord, she told him. I've always believed you. You're the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God. And I want to keep reading this. I think it's so important that I just read this story and let it tell itself, the story itself. Then she returned to Mary. She called Mary aside from the mourners and told her, the teacher's here, wants to see you. So Mary immediately went to him. Jesus had stayed outside the village at the place where Martha had met him. And when the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed that she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep. So they followed her there. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him. He was deeply troubled. "Where have you put him?" he asked them. Why did Jesus get angry? It wasn't that he was angry at anybody. He was angry at sin and death. They told him, "Lord, come and see." And then Jesus wept. Shortest verse of the Bible. The people who were standing nearby said, "See how much he loved him." But some said, "This man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?" Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb. A cave with a stone rolled across the entrance. "Roll the stone aside," Jesus told him. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, "Lord, he's been dead 4 days. The smell will be terrible." Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside, and then Jesus looked up to heaven, and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come forth." Because if he would have just said, "Come forth," every dead person would have came out of the grave. He's just that powerful. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth, and Jesus told him, "Unwrap him and let him go." That's the story of Lazarus. I'm sorry that I read so slow. I can't see half these words. It's a good thing I had read it before. Last night a code came up on our TV, and Amy said, "Read that to me." And I sounded like I was in second grade reading my first book. 8, 7... Not all of you get that today, but that's why I sounded like I've not read in a while, all right? Just wanted to throw that out there. When Jesus doesn't come when you expect, sometimes Jesus' delay is not his denial. Hear me out. What looks like the end of the story may be the very place where Jesus intends to reveal truly who he is. And the strangest part of the story is that John tells us something almost shocking. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. That's 11:5. And then in verse 6, so when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Does not sound like a brother who loves another brother. Like if you're God and you've got the power to heal, and you find out your brother you love, specific here, John's gospel states it, you love him, you're going to go fix him. So we think, and he waited 2 more days. Because he loved him, he stayed, question mark if you will. That's not how we think love works. If someone you love is sick, you go. If someone you love's hurting, you show up. If someone you love's dying, you don't wait 2 more days. But Jesus did. And that's where many of us struggle with God. A lot of times people will say, "If you love me, why didn't you come sooner?" That's what Mary and Martha said. So many times we will scold people for questioning these things. They're no different than Mary and Martha were right there in the very presence of Jesus Christ and saying, "Had you been here, this wouldn't have happened." I don't know if you've ever had those encounters with Jesus, and really it just shows how close they were to him that they could be so transparent. And I'm grateful that we can have such a relationship with Jesus that we can be so transparent with him as well and say to him, "Lord, I'm frustrated. Had you been here, this would not have happened. Had you been here, we wouldn't be hurting. Had you been here, this would not have taken place. God, if you love me, why did you let it happen? Why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you answer? Why didn't you heal? Why didn't you intervene?" John 11 teaches us that something incredibly important. Listen to me carefully. God's delay does not mean God's absence. God's delay does not mean his absence. I'm not saying it feels right. I'm not saying that changes it. And Jesus was angry within himself because he knew what sin had done, the separation and what it had brought, what death brought through the sin of Adam and Eve, and how it separates us from those that we love, if you will. And sometimes I want you to know this, God's silence isn't because he doesn't care. Sometimes he's doing something bigger than what we can truly see. But it's hard to see that. I've said it so many times before, and I've used it so many times ministering to families, especially in hospice care. But the life of a Christian, if you will, is like looking at a quilt. You see the quilt? Those older ladies would make those back south. They would have classes and do it. You would go in and see them. They would have these quilts. They were beautiful. But I called it the underneath. If you looked underneath it, it was pretty ugly, just being honest. So I guess you had to lay it a certain way to keep the underneath from showing and just show the pretty, or maybe I just called it for its finish. But nonetheless, I've always said that's kind of how it is in this life. God looks down and sees the beauty of his tapestry, which is flawless. We're looking up at the underneath. Sometimes we can't see what he's seeing. Sometimes we don't quite get what he's doing, but that doesn't mean that he's not still weaving that tapestry, and it's absolutely going to be perfect. The delay, number one, doesn't mean Jesus doesn't care. Mary and Martha sent word, Lord, the one you love is ill. Notice what they didn't say. They didn't give Jesus instructions. They didn't say come immediately. They simply tell him, why is this? The one you love is sick, because thinking, I don't need to beg you. If you love him, he's going to come. That's the normal human reaction. Hey, here's Jesus. This is God. My brother that you love sick. I just told you about it. I'm expecting that you're probably going to show up and fix it, but yet Jesus didn't do it in their time. They knew he loved Lazarus, but then Jesus waits and Lazarus dies. That's important because John doesn't allow us to interpret the delay as indifference. Verse 5 says this, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And verse 6 says, then he waits. Sometimes we interpret God's love by God's timing. I want to say that one more time. Sometimes we interpret God's love by God's timing. That's dangerous. It really is. That'll get you more messed up in your headspace about who God is and your theology than anything is when we interpret God's love by God's timing. Sometimes we think this, if God answers quickly, he loves me, or maybe I'm more right than I used to be. And then if God doesn't answer, he must have forgotten me. I'm not a good kid anymore. He doesn't love me as much. His love for me has grown cold. Whatever it could be, these are the warped mentalities that we sometimes can have in our lives. And so God's love is not to be interpreted by God's timing. Because if that was the case, Mary and Martha would have been as rightly so, but so out of sorts, if you will. Scripture says otherwise. God's love isn't measured by how quickly he changes our circumstances. Aren't you glad for that? Sometimes he loves us enough to let us walk through something we desperately wish that he would remove. Remember, Paul said, remove this thorn in my side, if you will, this thorn in my flesh. And God said, no, my grace is sufficient, my strength made perfect in weakness. Sometimes we'll tell people, oh, you got that in your life? God's going to take it. Listen to me, be careful, because God maybe doesn't want it. Are you hearing me today? Okay, all right, looks like I'm preaching to a still shot out there. Great, just breathe periodically. It's good for me. It helps me know you're with me. The delay doesn't mean he doesn't care. Number two, Jesus can be late and still be on time. Isn't that great? That's country, ain't it? But it sounds good. Jesus can be late and still be on time. By the time Jesus arrives, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. And Martha basically says, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. That's not necessarily rebellion. That's just her human nature. And that's what I was saying is so many times we try to shut people down when they're trying to voice their frustrations, their hurt, what it might be. When they're going through a tragedy, they're going through a trauma. But Jesus didn't rebuke her. He didn't say, you're a rebel, you don't believe in me. Or he didn't rebuke her in that moment. He was going to teach her and walk her through it. And I love that Jesus doesn't rebuke her. He meets her in her pain. And Martha said, had you been here. Again, I want to say this because this is so true. How many times have we said this? Lord, if you had answered, if you had intervened, if you had healed, if you had stopped, if you had been here. But here's the thing, Jesus wasn't absent. And we don't sometimes even like to hear that because we're like, well, if he's there, he should be fixing it. But again, you're looking at the underneath of the tapestry. He's looking from the upside, the beauty. He knows the perfection of it. You're looking from underneath it. And it's hard to see when the frays are hanging and things don't look exactly like you think they should look. He was simply operating according to a timeline Martha couldn't understand. And Jesus tells her, your brother will rise again. Martha thinks he's talking about the resurrection, and so he says this, I am the resurrection and life. Don't listen, when you hear the story of Lazarus, preachers will preach on it, they try to use it just for the healing purposes of if God raised the dead, boy, he'll do this for you. Jesus didn't bring Lazarus back so Lazarus could get the glory. He brought Lazarus back to show that he is the resurrection and the life. And that he is theology. Like she tries to say, well, at the last days, no, I am it. I'm it. Like you sit there and you can debate all your theology. I am the theology. I'm it. It starts and stops with me. I'm the resurrection and life. He doesn't just give her a doctrine, he gives her himself. And that's huge. Jesus doesn't merely say, I'm going to fix this. He says, I'm the answer to this. Are you with me? I don't know if you caught that, but I'm not going to just fix this. I'm the answer to this. I'm the answer to what's going on here. See, we look at all the stuff going on. We look at the tomb. We look at Lazarus. We look at people crying. We look at all this stuff. Jesus says, no, I'm the answer. I'm what can fix this. Because he's looking down. He sees the tapestry. And friend, listen to me carefully. There's some things in this life you're going to see the underneath until you see Jesus face to face. You may not understand what God's doing. You may not understand those things, but I'm telling you, he is not absent. Then Jesus enters into our grief. Isn't that encouraging? Then we get one of the most famous verses in the Bible, shortest. Jesus wept, John 11:35. For those of you that say, I cannot memorize Scripture, there's one you can get. Jesus wept. Think about this. Jesus knows Lazarus is about to walk out of that tomb. He knows the ending, and yet he cries. Why? Listen, because Jesus isn't detached from human pain. He sees what sin does. It divides. It brings death. And so he's angry at what sin did by separating Lazarus and causing death. And he said, I want to show that I'm the resurrection and the life. Listen to this, though. He doesn't stand outside our grief and say, don't worry, I've got it. He steps in and weeps with us. Is that not incredible? Think about that. No matter what you're going through, he's not on the outside. We sometimes just picture him so far away. And sometimes it feels like he's far away. Just being honest, Mary and Martha felt that. But in that, he weeps with them. Jesus isn't intimidated by our tears. You don't have to clean yourself up before you come to him. You can cry. You can hurt. You can say, I don't understand. You can even say, Lord, if you'd been here. And Jesus can handle it because he's not afraid of your pain. Some of us come across to people like we don't want them to express themselves to God as if it's blasphemous. Blasphemy is rejecting the Holy Ghost. Blasphemy is turning down salvation. Blasphemy is not pouring your heart out to a holy God. Just because you can't handle it don't mean he can't handle it. Right? He can handle whatever it is that you're facing. And I'm grateful for that. There are times in our lives we walk through stuff and we're like, man, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. But he is there with us. And listen, the Bible teaches us as our great high priest, he's touched with our infirmities. I'm not knocking any other religions, but I'm telling you, there's no other person who can intercede on your behalf and can feel what you got going on like King Jesus can. And he absolutely is there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, fourthly, let me say this real quick. The tomb is where faith gets real. Jesus gets to the tomb and says, take away the stone, verse 39. Martha immediately has a practical objection. And I love that. I'm practical. A lot of times, probably more so. And you got to balance that of being practical and then walking by faith. Because sometimes, like, there's just things practical. Like, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, my car's got a demon in it. And I'm like, no, you left your lights on. Right? Plug for earthy cars. There we go. Yeah. Jesus, we're past the point where this gets better. And maybe somebody feels that way today. It's too late. Too far gone. My family's too broken. My situation's too complicated. I've messed up too badly. I've waited too long. There's nothing God can do now. But Jesus says, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So we trust him that he sees the tapestry. And we know that in the end, he wins. So you sometimes have to just cross that threshold and say, you know what? No matter what's going on in my life, I know in the end, Jesus wins. Lenny and I were talking about this the other day. Everybody gets so wrapped up in end times. So many people are trying to tell you how the end times are going to go. So many people are out there. And if you believe that the Bible, let me try if I can get all this because I'm going off my notes here for a minute. But if you believe the Bible was written by 40 men over 1,500 years, 3 continents, and then that's the original people that God inspired to write it, and that's exactly true, then everybody from that is interpreting how they believe that. Are you hearing me today? So we're all going to get to heaven one day and find out we were all dumber than we thought. I just want to encourage you. But with that said, here's my point. Lenny and I were talking about this. People freak out about, are we going to go through the rapture or are we not? We're going to do this. I'm getting to this place, even doing this close to 30 years, and have been a student in seminaries and all these kind of stuff. I don't care anymore. And I'll tell you why. Because in the end, he wins. So if I get took out before a rapture, I'm down for that. If I got to live through it, his grace is sufficient. I'll make it through that. But in the end, King Jesus will win. And I'll win because I'm in King Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean we're not to study Revelation, preach Revelation. I get all that. Don't send me an email saying, Pastor, no. I get it. I'm just saying, though, I'm getting to a point to where we understand that in the end, we need to grab a hold of some things, and it's simply this. You're never going to totally understand the underneath side of the tapestry. We must walk by faith. So it's not believe and see, or it's believe and see, not see and believe. Faith says, I don't see yet, but I trust the one who does. Now, fifthly, let me say this real quick. Jesus calls Lazarus by name. Then Jesus cries out, Lazarus, come out, verse 43. I love this. Jesus doesn't walk into the tomb and negotiate with death. He doesn't struggle. He doesn't perform some elaborate ritual. So many times in this culture, we're looking for signs. I need a sign. I need this. I need that. What he needed was to speak the word. And he did it, and it worked. And so I'm not saying that God can't do miracles. Again, hear me out. But I'm just saying, he doesn't struggle. He doesn't negotiate with death. He doesn't perform some elaborate ritual. He simply speaks and death has to listen. Lazarus, come out. Still wrapped in grave clothes, still looking like a dead man who has been raised. And Jesus says, unbind him and let him go. And there's a whole other sermon there, because some of us are still holding on to the things of our last life, like shame and guilt and all those kind of things. And we got to understand that Jesus said, get that mess off of him. And God doesn't want him carrying it, and he don't want you carrying it. Are you with me today? You don't have to keep wearing that death put on you, that shame, that past. You don't have to keep wearing the identity of who you used to be. Jesus didn't call Lazarus out of the grave so he could continue living like a dead man. Number 6, real quick. Lazarus is a picture of what Jesus does for us. Let me say this and I'll give a little conclusion, then I'll wrap it up. Lazarus wasn't merely a man who got another few years of life. He eventually died again. And again, that's I don't know, man. Like, I'm not afraid of dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens. You know what I'm saying? And Lazarus crosses that threshold. Man, that's not as bad as I thought. Took a few breaths and here I am. And then he gets pulled right back in and he has to live again. But Lazarus wasn't merely a man who got another few years of life. So Jesus wasn't ultimately demonstrating, I can make dead people live longer. Hear me out on this, please. Listen carefully right here. I know you know that I'm winding down, and when you do that, I don't care if you're a teacher in school, you're a pupil, you're in the church, your mind starts checking out. Where are we eating? Just hang on. Stay with me right here. So Jesus wasn't ultimately demonstrating, I can make dead people live longer. He was demonstrating, I'm the resurrection and the life. See, we get our theology and we start focusing on how God can just bring a dead person back. We can do this and this and this. What about when he doesn't? Because at some point, if I don't die, I ain't seeing Jesus. Are you hearing me? Now, I'm not doing backflips about getting there. Are you with me? Lazarus is a preview, because one day Jesus himself would walk into a tomb, except this time nobody would have to call his name, and death would discover that it had met someone it couldn't keep. Lazarus came out of the tomb because Jesus called him, and Jesus came out of the tomb because he is life itself. That's the gospel. What a God we serve, right? So I ask you this today. What's behind your stone? Jesus stood outside of Lazarus' tomb and said, take away the stone. What's behind your stone? What have you buried? A dream? A hope? Something that you stopped praying about because you decided it was just too late? I get the frustration. Mary and Martha get it. I understand the questions and how that can come. Maybe God isn't asking you to understand everything. Maybe he's asking you just to move the stone and to trust him. Boy, we got all the excuses, don't we? The body stinks and blah, 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 blah. We got all this stuff going on. Like we make all these things. But if I move the stone, if I do this, sometimes faith is just moving the stone and saying, I don't really know. Matter of fact, this could turn out really not good. This could be an embarrassment to my family. This could be whatever it might be. Mary and Martha could have said that, but they just said, he said, look, move the stone. And they moved the stone. Then the miracle came, right? He didn't say, hey, Lazarus is in there. He's waiting to get out. Are you with me? He didn't let Lazarus scream, let me out. They waited till the stone got gone, and then they saw the miracle. That's the hope of Christianity. The voice that called Lazarus from the grave is the same voice that will one day call every believer from the grave. Jesus doesn't merely give resurrection. He is the resurrection. So when it feels like he's late, when it feels like he's forgotten, when it feels like the stone has been there too long, don't mistake his delay for his absence. Because the tomb may be exactly where Jesus intends to show you his glory. He still needs Jesus. He's still present. He's still the resurrection and the life, and He's still calling dead things to life today. So the greatest thing you can do is to realize that your righteousness is filthy rags. God made man. Man messed up. Man had to fix it. Thank God we don't get to heaven by our own merit. I'd never get in, neither would you. Never. I'd never get in. I'm telling you. And don't look so shocked. You wouldn't either. We're only getting in by the mercy and grace of God because Jesus died, rose, ascended back to heaven. And our salvation is not hinging upon what we do. It's upon what He did. We put our faith and our trust in Him. And once you do that, I believe you're eternally secure. I believe that. But that doesn't mean that along this way that we, even if we walk with Jesus like Mary and Martha did and Lazarus, that we won't go through times where we're like, I don't know what you're doing here. Like this underneath tapestry's ugly. You know what? Yours may look great up there, Lord. Good for you. But under here, this is horrible. And the reality is we have a God that we can come to today and talk to Him about it. But I also want to say this. Do not mistake. Don't you do it. Don't mistake God's love with His timing. God doesn't love me because He didn't do X, Y, Z when I thought He should. That's such a dangerous place to get to in your mind. That'll make you quickly begin to doubt everything. But we live like that, don't we? Because that's how our culture is. We do our kids that. We reward them. So like if you do something right, we reward you. So we're like, okay, Lord, I've been walking with you, and now there's something going on. I need you to fix it. And He says, I need to wait 2 days. That's the Christian life. Because in the end, you know what this whole thing was about? You ready? Just stay with me. You say, oh, there's so much stuff in this. Let me tell you what it was all about. God getting the glory. And you better remember something. God saved you not for yourself. He saved you. We're blessed because of it, don't get me wrong. But it's for His glory. It's for His glory. So if He waits 2 days, it's just because He's got something better in store. Right? Whatever it is that God's speaking in your heart today, you do business with Him. Heads bowed and eyes closed. Right there, you just pray, you seek the Lord. If you've never trusted Jesus, right there, you can turn from your sin and trust in what Jesus has done for you. He's the way, the truth, and the life. If you're here today and maybe you're going through a time of, as I have, do, and will, frustrations or questions or doubts or wonderings about what is going on. Lord, you say you love me, and I know you do, but 2 days, and then, Lord, that just creates so much more stuff. This underneath ain't looking so good. But Lord, I'm trusting today in the tapestry that you see from the top side down. So I'm trusting you today in that. I need peace. I need strength. I need grace to walk through whatever it is that these folks are walking through. And we're trusting you for that. So Lord, I pray that people will leave here today free. If they're carrying around any of those old grave clothes of shame and guilt and their old identity, whatever it might be, Lord, help them to get rid of that. We trust you. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.